What are all 12 Mythical Zone fruits? Who is the strongest Mythical Zone user? How would the Mythical Zone users from bonus materials, like the overpowered Vampire Fruit user, match up to the strongest main story Mythical Zone users? We'll be answering all of these questions as we explain and rank all 12 Mythical Zone users from weakest to strongest, including the little known non-canon ones that are very interesting, so make sure to stay tuned for that. Now, channel Pirate King within, and smash that like button if you enjoy seeing One Piece videos like this one. If you haven't already, join the NonCanon by subscribing and hitting that notification bell to turn on all notifications. And now, without further ado, let's jump into it, spoilers and all. Coming in at number 12, we turn to a video game, specifically to One Piece Unlimited World Red. In this video game, we find out about Inu Inu no Mi model Bakedanuki, literally translated to Dog Dog Fruit model Monster Raccoon Dog. It allows its user to transform into a Tanuki monster, and it was eaten by, get this, a pen. Oda designed the Mythical Zone pen called Pato, and Pato belongs to Patrick Redfield, who is a hype figure that we'll discuss later on in the list because he's obviously way stronger. Pato may not be the most overpowered Mythical Zone user, but he's definitely interesting. He can use the tip of his tail to write, and furthermore has the ability to transform leaves into objects and people by writing on them. His owner uses this ability to create clones to fight for him, but the cute Pato himself hasn't proved himself to be much of a fighter, so I wouldn't feel justified putting him any higher on this list. And now it's time to shout out the sponsor of today's video, War Thunder. If you're like me, you're very interested in military history and anime, but it's not often you can combine these two passions. Well, thankfully, War Thunder has you covered. Experience some amazing military action in this game while also enjoying the oh so important anime vibes. Use your favorite anime themed skins and decals for your tanks, aircraft, and ships. War Thunder contains heart-pounding combat combined with epic customization, so you'll never want to say goodbye to this waifu-filled battlefield. Picture yourself piloting your dream fighter jet covered in anime girls, flying high in the sky and raining destruction down on your enemies like a true pirate king. Or rolling through enemy lines in a tank that rocks your waifu's beautiful face. Watch your enemies bow before your power and your waifu. Plus, they've got awesome waifu dakimakuras, so you have your #1 anime girl there with you while you crush your enemies. Can anything sound sweeter?
PC、PlayStation、Xbox から今すぐ無料でWar Thunderをダウンロードしよう。
So what are you waiting for? Download War Thunder for free right now from the link in the description and get a Dakimakura pillow and other bonuses. Coming in at number 11, we fittingly got Stronger, who has the Uma Uma no Mi model Pegasus, or the Horse Horse Fruit model Pegasus, and he has seen his fair share of battles. Stronger is Doc Hugh's pet, and as you can see, a lot of the lower entries of this list will belong to pets rather than later on in the list, where we get to the main fighters. Like his owner, Stronger is very sick most of the time, but yet, these two are still strong enough to have privileged positions on Blackbeard's crew, which is impressive in and of itself. Although how sickly these two are is an ongoing joke, it's notable that Stronger survived Magellan's deadly venom and a shockwave attack from Golden Buddha Sengoku, who we'll also get to later on in this list. As a horse who ate the Pegasus fruit, as you may imagine, one of the big benefits is that he got wings now and can fly, while carrying Doc Q and even Blackbeard at the same time. But we haven't seen enough yet to put this sickly horse any higher on the list. We'll see if other cool powers besides flight get revealed down the line. Number 10, we have the non-canon Tori Tori no Mi model Nue, aka the Bird Fruit model Nue. This fruit was featured in the One Piece Art Nue, a series of artwork created for the One Piece X Kyoto event in 2017 that depicts a non-canon story of the Straw Hats in Wano. The fruit was eaten by Toratsugu, a resident of Wano, which is fitting because the Nue is a mythical Japanese yokai. It's a chimera beast that borrows different body parts from different animals. For instance, it has the face of a monkey, the body of a tiger, the mane of a lion, and a snake for a tail. When Toratsugu transforms into the yokai, he has the ability to fly, but is nevertheless overpowered relatively quickly and easily by Luffy, who knocks him out with a single punch. Oda himself drew the climactic scene where Luffy battles the Nue. This user is similar to Stronger in the sense that he gained flight from his fruit, which seems to be the main benefit. But the fact that he's a chimera beast served however short shortly as an antagonist for Luffy, is not a pet and is not as sickly makes me put him above stronger for now. Number 9, we have the user of the Hito no Mi model Onyudo, aka Human Fruit mythical model Onyudo. Onyudo translates to Big Monk and is a reference to a large monk yokai in Japanese folklore. The current user is Onimaru, a fox that used to be friends with Master Swordsman Shimotsuki Ushimaru, the Zoro lookalike, which makes sense since we recently figured out that he is the great uncle of Zoro. Like with Chopper, the fruit has given Onimaru an animal the ability to turn into a human more or less, and in his giant monk form where he towers over Zoro, he can speak as well. In his humanoid form, he's called Gyukimaru. As you'd expect, Onimaru's mythical zone comes with increased endurance, letting him make it through a lot, including arrows and even a bazooka. I sort of want to just say that all mythical zone users have mythical endurance, since it seems like so many of them can bounce back from so much, all the more so now that a certain plot armored main character was revealed to be one as well. For Onimaru, it makes sense that his giant size comes with increased power as well. It's also noteworthy that Gyukimaru exchanged blows with Zoro in his yokai form. He's obviously not stronger than Zoro, but still, you need to be pretty skilled to not get overwhelmed immediately by our Zoro, so all in all, pretty impressive stuff for a fox. And I'll just say that Onimaru to me feels like a really cool throwback to Chow Chow, the dog from Orange Town. Obviously, Oda gave the fox more development in a mythical zone fruit, but they have similar energies for sure, they just happen to be protective over different things. Number 8, we got the corrupted shogun of Wano, Kurozumi Orochi, and his Hebi no Mi model Yamato no Orochi. Now, he's not someone we'd associate with extraordinary fighting prowess, but he has so many lives it's almost impossible to kill the dude. This fruit might remind you of Naruto, specifically of Orochimaru. Its English name is the snake fruit model Yamato no Orochi, and it's based on an 8-headed serpent/dragon in Japanese mythology. This fruit lets Orochi transform into a giant 8-headed serpent. We've seen that Orochi can easily grab and trap a person within the jaws of one of his serpent heads. Having 8 heads also lets you attack multiple people at once, which is useful. The fruit, as many of us predicted, also lets you survive being beheaded. One mythical parallel of the Yamato no Orochi is the Hydra in Hercules, and most of us may remember that cutting off one of its heads never did the trick. In fact, in that example, multiple heads would grow back to replace the first. At one point, Kaido beheads Orochi, which wasn't that surprising. After all, why would such a strong figure want to keep someone as annoying, cowardly, and proud as Orochi around longer than necessary? Later, Orochi recovered somehow, and then ran into the Red Scabbards. Fukurokuju informed him that the Red Scabbards didn't even know that he'd already died once at Kaido's hand. What might have been a crazy reveal to them ended up being an anticlimactic but hilarious revenge. After Orochi transformed into his 8-headed form and arrogantly talked about how he would finish off the injured Red Scabbards, the Scabbards went on to slice off all of his heads effortlessly, commenting on how they have no time to waste on the likes of Orochi. Now, this is as far as we got when I dropped my first Mythical Zones Explained video. At that point, we weren't sure if Orochi would survive having all of his heads taken off, but I mentioned it wouldn't be surprising if he did, considering his Mythical Zone fruit. And as if to not disrespect a Mythical Zone, Oda did in fact have Orochi survive even those multi-beheadings. It seems like Kanjo's flame finally took him out, and for him to finally die, Hiyori had to neutralize his Mythical Zone power with the help of Sea Prism Stone nails. So to take him out, they had to temporarily make him in effect a non-fruit user, which still hypes up how powerful his fruit actually was. In the end, the Yamato no Orochi is a very interesting fruit with unique abilities like most Mythical Zone fruits. I honestly don't even know what, if anything, would have killed him if Hiyori didn't neutralize his fruit powers. But cool fruits don't always go to cool or even especially strong characters, and this is one of those times. Although I found the fruit fascinating, Orochi himself was definitely not worthy of such a mythical fruit. Number 7 is one of the Blackbeard's 10 Titanic commanders, Crescent Moon Hunter Katarina Devon. She ate the Inu no Mi model Kyubi no Kitsune. For Pokemon and Naruto fans, it's pretty much like the 9-tailed fox fruit, and in the Viz manga is called the Dog fruit mythical type model 9-tailed fox. Devon is 36 years old after the time skip, and her current bounty is unknown, but we do know that she's a whopping 11 feet and 10 inches tall, or 361 centimeters. She can use her fruit to transform into a 9-tailed fox, and perhaps more interestingly, she can use the power to transform herself into anyone and impersonate them. During chapter 925, we saw the fruit in action when she used it against Gecko Moria, tricking the latter into thinking that Absalom was still alive. She does transform back after it's revealed that Absalom is dead and that Shiryu stole his clear fruit. It's the best fruit for disguising yourself as someone else because it allows the user to transform their clothes as well, unlike the clone fruit. I wouldn't be surprised if, like with Kaido's fruit, which we'll get to in a bit, more different fruit related powers reveal themselves as the story progresses for Devon. Since the cool thing about mythical zones is they usually come with multiple abilities, not just one. However, for now, we haven't seen much of this fruit. Unlike Orochi though, Devon was known for her strength even without her mythical fruit. Ivanko said her name first when she was talking about how only the worst prisoners go to level 6 of Impel Down. Then there's the fact that she was one of the strongest of the level 6 prisoners and survived Blackbeard's free-for-all level 6 battle. Then Blackbeard even chose her to be one of the 10 Titanic commanders. So for all these reasons, it's not hard for me to put Devon higher than Orochi on this list. Number 6 is Yamato, Kaido's child and number 1 Oden fan. As we found out, Yamato also has a mythical zone fruit, namely the Inu Inu no Mi model Okuchi no Makami, or the Dog fruit model Okuchi no Makami. We're told that it is a rare mythical wolf and that it is a guardian spirit of Wano, and that made it all the more painful for Kaido that Yamato was using it and claiming to be Oden. At first, it seemed like she might have eaten it by accident, but now with the revelation that specifically zone fruits have a will of their own in chapter 1044, it's possible that the fruit in a sense chose Yamato because her beliefs complemented that of a Wano protector so well. The fruit lets Yamato turn into a wolf god pretty much, and we've seen the cool looking hybrid form clash with Kaido's own hybrid form. Not only is it clearly mythical and powerful, it's also very valuable because of its symbolic value for Wano specifically. It would obviously be easier to rule a country if their guardian deity was supporting you rather than challenging your authority. Another hype fact is that Kaido says he worked hard to acquire that devil fruit, and whenever Yonko work hard to acquire a specific fruit, like Blackbeard with the dark fruit and even Shanks with the Gomu Gomu no Mi, it's always a sign that the fruit is an especially big deal. Keep in mind, this is not just a mythical zone, but a carnivorous mythical zone, making the fruit especially well suited for combat, and it would have to be special to allow one to repeatedly clash with the so-called world's strongest creature in his overpowered hybrid form. We saw how quickly Kaido took out Luffy the first time they fought, so the fact that Yamato can occupy the former Yonko for so long while he's in his strongest form is no small feat. We've also seen Yamato fire a mouth blast called Namuji Glacier Fang at Kaido that was met with one of his own blast breaths, and the attacks canceled each other out. It's an interesting attack name that lends a fire versus ice dynamic to the Kaido versus Yamato fight. More recently, Yamato saved the day by encasing the majority of Kaido's bombs in ice and thus prevented Kanjuro's fire from setting off a giant all-encompassing explosion. Yamato and the mythical wolf god fruit did not disappoint, and as I've said many times, I would have loved to have a mythical zone user like Yamato join the Straw Hat crew. But since we relatively recently found out that we already have one, as we'll get into later, I'm not as bothered about her not joining the crew. I always said it wouldn't make much sense symbolically for the guardian deity of Wano to leave the island. Especially if the will of zone fruits will continue to be an important factor in the story, it was always likely that this mythical zone would push Yamato towards staying near Wano, so Yamato can watch over and protect it if the need arises. But as far as the ranking goes, I don't think I need to spend too much time explaining why someone so strong and who did so well against Kaido is being placed above the other characters on this list. Devon definitely seems to have more upper sleeves, but I can't put her above Yamato from what we've seen. And even taking into account that there's more to the Crescent Moon Hunter than we've seen so far, it's still hard to picture her being stronger than Yamato right now. For number 5, let's look at a character who is definitely worthy of his mythical zone fruit, Dr. Marco the Phoenix. Marco is as legendary as Yonko commanders come. He was the right-hand man to Whitebeard, the man called the strongest in the world and the closest to the One Piece. He's currently 45 years old and he's October's very own like me, so I'm glad to see him in the top 5. He's 6 feet 8 inches tall and his bounty is 1.374 billion berries, a bounty bigger than Queen's former impressive bounty of 1.32 billion, so even among Yonko commanders, his bounty is top tier, although it was revealed that King actually had a higher former bounty at 1.39 billion. Side note, how crazy is it that an injured Zoro beat a dude with a higher bounty than Marco? Absolutely insane to think about how far our crew has come. But before Zoro did that, Marco was, albeit temporarily, handling King and Queen at the same time. He even appeared to have the the upper hand, although he did admit that, not surprisingly, it's quite hard to stall 2 with bounties over 1 billion. Of course, Marco the Phoenix has the Phoenix fruit, more specifically the Tori Tori no Mi model Phoenix or the Bird fruit model Phoenix. Another way to translate it is Immortal Bird, another hype detail about the mythical fruit. Back in chapter 553, we first saw Marco use his ability, and it was to deflect an admiral's attack no less without breaking a sweat. Marco's fruit allows him to adopt the properties of a phoenix or to straight up fully transform into a blue phoenix. Marco's blue flames allow him to heal himself or others. This is one of the reasons that the Immortal Bird translation is so apt, because Marco can seemingly heal from otherwise lethal wounds using blue flames. It's like an enhanced Logia because Marco can take hits as if they just went through him, but in his case, he could also use the blue flames to heal from Haki-infused attacks as well. As mentioned, Marco could block Admiral Kizaru's attack, and he also successfully blocked Admiral Akainu's as well during the Paramount War, and he would later have no lasting damage, showing just how superior this fruit is to Ace's Flame fruit, which was easily defeated by Akainu. As mentioned earlier, he was able to use his fruit for a while to also hold his own while fighting against King and Queen at the same time, 2 Yonko commanders with both confirmed bounties over 1 billion berries. Obviously, this doesn't mean he could actually beat them both at the same time, and Perospero pointed out that he looked exhausted, but it's still very impressive. Considering how good of a fighter Marco is in battle, it's all the more impressive that he can be just as helpful when it comes to healing others. He's used his flames to help heal others, and more specifically, he's used them as a way to help prevent the further spread of Queen's virus in many people. Notably, Marco's flames won't burn you as they burn like conventional flames, but they can definitely be used to reinforce the power of his attacks, so the OP power comes with both offensive, defensive, and healing capabilities. Notably, Oda has told us that Marco's healing has limitations in a question corner, so he's not necessarily immortal in his Phoenix form. It's quite likely that if Marco drains all of his stamina, he won't be able to use his healing powers, which might explain why he sometimes leaves minor wounds like scratches or bruises unhealed in battle. Another way that Marco could definitely be killed is if you expose him to Sea Stone. Then he won't be able to use his regeneration on mortal wounds. It should be said that Marco's forces fought against Blackbeard's forces in the Payback War about a year after the Paramount War, and Marco's side was obliterated. Even so, Marco made it out fine without suffering lasting wounds thanks to his Phoenix powers. But I think that's enough about Marco for the purposes of this video. His mythical fruit is one of my favorites, and though it has limits, the fruit along with Marco's own prowess has let him at the very least exchange blows with many of the best fighters in the world without taking any lasting damage. Number 4 is the user of the Bato Bato no Mi model vampire, aka the Bat fruit model vampire. He is the owner of the already mentioned Pet Pen Pato, and also from the same non-canon video game, so don't take this one too seriously either. This fruit gives its user, Patrick Redfield, the ability to turn into a, you guessed it, vampire. This character was designed by Oda himself and serves as the main antagonist of the One Piece Unlimited World Red game. Again, this is non-canon, but according to Sengoku, Redfield was powerful enough to rival the Pirate King in his prime and Whitebeard, and this was before he ate his devil fruit. With his unique new Mythical Zone powers, he can sharpen his teeth and use them to, you guessed it, pretty much suck the blood of his enemies. They age quickly as a result while he becomes stronger, and through these means, he gains access to eternal youth. Now in theory, this sounds very overpowered, and someone with the power to rival Prime, Goldie, Roger, and Whitebeard, plus the power of eternal youth to stay in their own prime, in addition to cool vampire powers, could even be at the top of this list. But the non-canon story confuses things and makes me not put him on the top. At one point, Redfield has his youth again and has taken Luffy's, and Luffy still manages to knock him down, and then thanks to Luffy's motivational speech, Redfield decides that he won't use his powers to stay young and at his prime, but will try to be the Pirate King as an old man. Then he fails to beat the Straw Hats in a fight, and again, this is not Luffy at his strongest. This is not the Gear 5 Luffy we know today, but a much weaker one in this video game. So with all of this stuff in mind, I just couldn't put Redfield higher than this on the list. Number 3 is Sengoku, the former fleet admiral and living legend. He was one of the major figures back during Goldie Roger's time, along with Whitebeard, Shiki, and Garp. After the time skip, this dude is 79 years old. He has an especially interesting mythical zone fruit, namely the Hito Hito no Mi model Daibutsu, or the human fruit model Buddha. He has the ability to transform into a giant gold Buddha. During chapter 578 at Marineford, we see his giant form launch shockwaves at Blackbeard. Blackbeard and his crew are shown to be rattled by the attack, whited out eyes, blood, and all that jazz, but obviously the attack doesn't keep Blackbeard down. Obviously his size and physical power in this form are great, and although he failed to execute Ace with a punch thanks to Luffy's inflated stomach and a candle wall, his power still led to the execution platform collapsing. So that's Sengoku. We haven't seen much of his power in action, but what we have seen was no doubt epic, definitely a power fitting for a former fleet admiral. He's past his prime to be sure, but I can't picture this legend doing worse than Redfield did in that fight with that version of Luffy from the Unlimited World Red game. So as not to disrespect the Golden Fleet Admiral, I gotta place him here. Number 2 is Kaido, the leader of the Beast Pirates and the man who was called the strongest creature in the world before another Mythical Zone creature defeated him, as we'll get into soon. Kaido's bounty was over 4.6 billion berries, meaning among the living Yonko, he had the highest bounty after Whitebeard passed on. So the question was for a long time, what exact devil fruit did Kaido have? What Mythical Zone is worthy of going to the leader who stands at the apex of the animal kingdom that is the Beast Pirates? There were theories that he had a straightforward dragon fruit, even theories that he was a dragon who had some kind of human fruit. But during chapter 999, Big Mom revealed that on the day rocks fell into ruin at God Valley, she gave Kaido a legendary model of the fish fruit. And she even says because of that, Kaido owes her his life. That's how big of a favor this fruit was in her view. The official name for the legendary mythical fish fruit was given to us in a data book, and it was the Ua Ua no Mi model Seryu, or the fish fruit model Seryu. The Seryu is an Azure dragon, and if this at first confuses you, how a fish fruit can turn into a dragon, just think of Magikarp and Gyarados in Pokemon. Gyarados too is based off of the Japanese Seryu, which is in turn based off of a Chinese myth. Specifically, there's a Chinese Dragon Gate myth, where there's this giant waterfall, and if a carp is able to persevere and make it all the way to the top of the practically impossible to climb waterfall, it will become a dragon. I'd like to think personally that Kaido's dragon form is a sign that he was skilled enough and worked hard enough to awaken the fruit. And usually the user of this fruit starts off as a kind of weak Magikarp rather than as a majestic dragon. This isn't confirmed though, and if it does start out as a Magikarp fruit, then the question arises, can it allow its user to actually swim or at least breathe underwater despite the usual devil fruit curse? But that's a topic for another video. And back to the question, if this is a fitting fruit for the world's strongest creature. It definitely seems to be, since Eastern dragons like this one were often considered to be extremely powerful and were even worshipped as gods. It's almost like we need another godly fruit to take down such a powerful fruit user. But back to Kaido's specific powers, we often see him transform into his Azure dragon form, and more recently in the story we even got to see his hybrid form, which is accompanied by a very cool tail. Overall, I really like the aesthetic of his hybrid form. Kaido's dragon form is the biggest zone transformation we've seen, and he absolutely dominates the skyline when he's flying overhead. His dragon form is so big and powerful that it's stated he could obliterate all of Kuri if he thrashes about in a drunken stupor while in his dragon form. Thus, without even trying to, he could destroy an entire region of a country. The insane durability of his mythical scales has also been noted multiple times. During chapter 923, Luffy hit Kaido many times with hockey enhanced attacks, and although they landed and looked painful, Kaido got up unscathed like absolutely nothing happened and went on to take out Luffy with one blow. It's also been said about Kaido's fruit that it gives Kaido access to more supernatural abilities than any other mythical zone we've seen so far, although I feel like the mythical zone that took him down will definitely give it a run for its money. One such ability is that he can create flame clouds that for all intents and purposes allow him to fly and can even lift up an entire island and turn it into a flying castle. Additionally, Kaido has been seen launching devastating fire blasts from his mouth in dragon mode and hybrid mode, and the list goes on. This truly godlike creature has turned his roar into lightning, he has released blades of wind strong enough to cut off a red scabbard's arm, and he's able to summon multiple tornadoes, which led to Zoro labeling him a natural disaster. It seems like in close combat for the most part, Kaido's hybrid form is the most powerful since he saves that one for last. He's not unhurtable because attacks that can bypass his tough scales can cause harm, like advanced hockey infused attacks, the Ope Ope no Mi's surgical techniques, and so on. After all, Odin did succeed in leaving a huge lasting scar on him. Still, there's no doubt that this is one of the best devil fruits of all. It even makes the sea, a usual devil fruit weakness, a non-issue because the dragon form can just fly over it. Not to mention the possibility that even if rendered paralyzed, a fish fruit could potentially let the user breathe underwater. Or at least I'm gonna believe that until Oda tells me otherwise. The final overpowered form Kaido used in his fight against Luffy was Kaen Daiko, aka Fire Dragon Great Torch. Kaido's giant dragon body is surrounded by flames in this form. This means that almost nobody could even touch him, let alone hit him, because the heat of the form melts what it comes into contact with. The only reason Luffy could touch, let alone defeat Kaido, is because he mastered advanced haki that allows him to hit his opponent without making direct physical contact. Very few people have this level of haki mastery, and so Kaido would for most people be truly untouchable. But luckily, Luffy, the next Mythical Zone user we're talking about, is one of the elite few who could defeat this version of Kaido. And of course, for number 1, we got the Mythical Zone user on the Straw Hat crew, Luffy, our protagonist himself. Long story short, if you haven't gotten the memo yet, the Gomu Gomu no Mi is actually not a Paramecia rubber fruit, but a Mythical Zone fruit. Its actual name is the human fruit mythical model Nika, and Nika was a sun god associated with liberation. So it makes sense that when Luffy awakens this fruit, his hair looks like it's made out of flames and turns white. Luffy calls this awakened form Gear 5, and I gotta say, it reminded me of the Super Saiyan form. Nothing wrong with that. It's not a bad thing for it to be a nod to the Super Saiyan form. In fact, it's a nice homage to the very important Dragon Ball series that paved the way for many shonen like One Piece. But don't get me wrong either, this is a unique form with very unique powers, as we're about to get into. Obviously, Luffy's fruit deserves its own dedicated video, and accordingly, we published one called All 5 Gears Explained. But for this video, I'll summarize the gist of it. It's like the most special fruit. As far as we know, it's the only one that was so dangerous and special that the government changed its name. It's associated with the sun god Nika, with Joy Boy, and now with our main character. And the last time it awakened was more than 800 years ago, so since then, the users before Luffy only got to the rubber stage of it. That's a nice little aspect to it because yeah, Luffy still has a super special fruit, but at least he had to work hard in order to unlock its specialness. Many others probably had this godly fruit and never got to this point. The 5 elders further explained that they attempted to get the sun god fruit for 800 years and not once did they succeed. It actively tried to escape their grasp, and as I already explained, that type of personification makes sense because specifically zone fruits are said to contain a will of their own. This suggests that the fruit probably picked Luffy similarly to how I believe Yamato's fruit probably picked her. It wasn't just Luffy happening to eat it, it probably called out to him on some level. So what are some of the properties of this god fruit? We know the rubber part, but it's explained that after awakening, the rubbery body of the user gains greater physical strength and freedom. It is said by the 5 elders that there is no power more ridiculous, with 2 exclamation marks in the official translation. It's portrayed as the biggest deal and for good reason. It's also mentioned that the rubber body lets the user fight in whatever way he fancies, bringing smiles to the faces of the people. Another name for the sun god, we're told, is also the warrior of liberation. Now that's a big deal. The quote saying that a user of the fruit can fight in whatever way they fancy, it seems to imply that Luffy is only limited by his imagination when it comes to the way in which he fights and the powers which he manifests. I won't go so far as to say that he can do anything yet, because some of this might be more legend than truth, but it'll be interesting to see how accurate the description is as the story progresses and Luffy continues to use his new awakened powers. So far we've seen Luffy use his awakened fruit to grab Kaido's dragon form like he was a mere snake toy and pull him up to the roof. He proceeded to practically enter a Toon World. He spun Kaido around and slammed him into the ground over and over again. Kaido's eyes popped out like in Looney Tunes, suggesting that Luffy can make his opponents take on these exaggerated characteristics, not just himself. We also see Luffy pull a Popeye and summon massive muscles all of a sudden. I mean, if he is strong enough to lift Kaido like this, I doubt there's any opponent he can't lift. He also rubberized the ground and lifted it up to deflect the blast breath, showing his awakened powers can definitely affect his surroundings. He grabbed and threw lightning like Zeus. He created a beyond giant fist that was able to knock out and defeat Kaido's giant flame dragon form. But the fruit, as impressive as it is not why Luffy is first on this list. If Luffy did not have advanced mastery over Haki, he would have been melted by Kaido's flame dragon form. As Kaido himself pointed out, Haki is even more important than devil fruits when looking at a character's strength, and the great Pirate King Goldie Roger became the Pirate King without any fruit. So although Luffy defeated the former strongest creature in the world, and in my opinion deserves to be at the top of this Mythical Zone user list, it doesn't mean he's the strongest character yet. He has awakened an amazing fruit, perhaps the most amazing fruit, but still has a ways to go before he can rule over the rest as the Pirate King, the strongest of all. And we'll see, perhaps more Mythical Zone users will be revealed who are even stronger than Luffy is now. And this list may have to be revised, but for now I feel comfortable putting Luffy at the top as the strongest known Mythical Zone user. Thanks again to the sponsor of today's video, War Thunder. Don't forget to download War Thunder for free from the link in the description now and get a Dakimakura pillow and other bonuses. Even though Mythical Zone users tend to be strong, Yonko tend to be even stronger. So if you like exploring strong characters like these ones, you don't want to miss my all 7 Yonko and their powers explained video. Link on screen right now, and I'll see you there.